We've had a tremendous year here at KaiNexus. Obviously, the product is the basis of everything we do. To coordinate a release is a tremendous amount of effort, and this is just some of the steps. We have to prioritize, design, code review, test, write all the support documentation. Then we have to go back and update all of our demos, showroom. We have to communicate with all of our customers. It's a lot of work. So we decided to see exactly how our developers do what they do. They're not aware of this, but I put a video camera in the office because they're like delicate creatures. There's like the dandelion and there's the orchid. And now they're trying to get in this elusive flow state. To see one of these developers actually in this state, it's very rare. But I have something very special today. I managed to get one of our top developers on video while in this state. This is what they look like. We have a room full of developers that are doing exactly this when they get there. So when I tell our team, please do not send an email to our developer, this is why, because you do not want to stop one of these guys looking like that. So before we get into the year in review, I want to talk about the ARC. I have literally not changed this slide in 5 years, not because I'm lazy, but because it's truly that type of an ARC. When we started KaiNexus with KaiNexus 1.0, it was a tool, right? A tool does one thing really well. Hammer, gonna hammer, and a screwdriver's gonna screwdriver, and screwdriver. And as we got feedback from the first poor souls that decided to initially beta test the system, and then we managed to convince a few people to pay us some money, we realized that everyone does continuous improvement differently. And to take people off of paper and Excel and SharePoint, we were really going to have to figure out how they did it and then be able to configure a system to work in their language. And as Chris said, there's a lot of different ways to get to the same endpoint. We're all trying to get to the nirvana to spread continuous improvement. We're all on a different journey there. And so it became very clear that we need to develop a platform. So a platform can be configured in lots of different ways. It's going to be used differently by different customers. And then we realized in order to really push this concept forward, to really push technology forward to where technology was a value add, it was going to have to become part of the ecosystem. And so what I mean by ecosystem is it's going to have multiple platforms and it's going to have to connect. And there isn't a linear exact progression. I mean, I've written this. Sometimes you'll see the product. I mean, I think we're clearly out of tool. There's no question. We're clearly somewhere in platform. We're moving into ecosystem. But the fact that we're hearing the words API nonstop now is a representation that we're moving into this recognition that the platform is really starting to accomplish and really starting to change behaviors. And for it to get ingrained into what we do, it needs to start connecting into our BI platform, maybe into an ERP platform, maybe into HR platform. And that's not an easy task. That's not something you just put a cat on for the weekend. I mean, that's a really big task. And so that's 2 weekends. So that's a little bit of the arc that we're doing. And we're somewhere clearly in platform, moving into ecosystem. So a little bit of the platform concept. I mean, just to give you guys an idea, an OI back in 2010 had a description, an optional proposed solution, and eventually it had 4 hard-coded attributes. And that was it. There was one of them, and it was called an opportunity for improvement. There was no configuration on that. Now your templates are completely configurable. There was one user type back in the day. Now we have 5 user types: full access, frontline. Now you're seeing if I can remember all the different user types. Frontline, capture, offline, and incident users. And we have a mobile app. We have the web app, and we actually do have an API, and it does a whole bunch of different things. It just doesn't do enough of those things yet. And so we truly have a fairly complex platform, and it's really what we're trying to do is give the most timely information to the right user at the right time. What has 2019 been? I stood up here about a year ago and said, we're going to focus on the year of adoption. So what the heck does that mean? We decided we were going to take a concerted effort to try to not build new things. Now, of course, with every rule, you got to break it, like with voting, right? But we really tried to go back through all of the features that we had been developing and try to make them easier to use, to make them more robust. And Ryan and I went through several different releases, and we tagged every enhancement as whether we thought it was directly related to making an existing feature easier to use or not. And over 50% of everything we developed in the last year clearly fit in the adoption mode. So that's what we've been doing. There's going to be a theme for next year, but you're going to hear about it tomorrow. So as you're thinking through all of the features that we did, think about that. At the end of the user conference last year, everyone voted. And these were the results of the vote. 45% of all the votes said, please work more on reporting. 24% boards, milestones, you can read it all. And so I think we did a pretty good job. I think you're gonna definitely think back when I show you some of the enhancements we did in reporting that we probably spent the majority of our efforts on making the reporting suite much more robust. So 2.3 was 6 releases, was 350 enhancements. We released about every 6 to 8 weeks. So we do this modified agile. Whenever I say the word agile, the developers, they kind of like cringe and say, we're not agile. And I kind of mentioned the amount of work that it takes to do a release. And so we do this modified agile. We swung the pendulum from, we were releasing about every maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We swung the pendulum, and in 2000, end of 18 and 19, we released about every 6 to 8 weeks. The pendulum is going to swing a little bit back over the next year, and we're going to try to find this nice sweet spot of every 5 to 6 weeks. We think we went a little too long in our releases. And so keep an eye out for that. Now, we try not to release around Christmas and New Year's and all those sorts of things, so it sometimes has to do with things of that nature, but that's one of the things that we're going to be focusing on for the next year. So, kick back. I hope everyone went to the bathroom because we're going to go through 350 enhancements. Now, I'm just going to talk about some of our favorites. So, we identified 60 enhancements that we felt were worthy of going through, and I still couldn't get through all 60, so we're not going to go through 60 enhancements. But these are just some of the, to give you an idea of the scope of the enhancement that we did this year, these are some of them. You might be able to, in the 8-point font, see what some of these are. Keep in mind that we are not building this product because we think building technology is cool. We are building this product because we are on a mission to spread continuous improvement. We're on a mission to be your technology partner. And so your feedback and your pushing us, even though sometimes it's stressful to us because we want to do what every single feature that everybody wants, but it's actually what we live on, and it's what has resulted in what we think is a pretty darn good piece of technology. So please keep giving us feedback. Reports used to be powerful. I think they are insanely powerful now. So let's just take a look at some of the things we did in reports this past year. We added the advanced filter to the snapshot. So now when you put things in that filter, it's going to apply to every report you pull open. I mean, some of the stuff I was looking back at and I was thinking, the product used to not have this in here? I don't even remember when it didn't have it in here. We added reference date to every report. So what does reference date mean? So it's basically when you are setting your dates, we're asking you, do you want to use the start date? Do you want to use the due date, the complete date, the create date? You can now pick which reference date you want. I think someone I was talking to during lunch was saying they were trying to correlate data in one system and bring it into another system, and they realized it probably has to do with the date that's being referenced. And so now we let you choose that. We combined all of the reports. So if you'll remember, there used to be project reports independently of improvement reports. And by the way, there were no task reports and there were no chart reports, and incident reports were in a completely separate area. We now combined all those reports and made it pretty powerful. Let's take a look at the item report. So now you can toggle. If you want all of them, you just don't select on anything. But if you just want to look at reports, you can just click on reports or just improvements, or you can look at projects and improvements. Not only that, but you can select the interval that you want the report to be shown in. So we used to always just pick a default for you. Now you can use the default, or if you want to see your x-axis in week, in month. We also added quarter and annual. We have 6 years worth of data in our instance, and I'm looking out at some of the customers that have been using us for 5 and 6 years. And so a year interval sometimes is just the right interval that you want to see things in. We're looking at a quarterly interval here. This is a brand new report. It's called the Activity Over Time Report. Not only does it let you pick projects, improvements, task charts, but it also lets you pick the reference date and the interval. And as our developers would say, there isn't a toggle switch in the code to do all this. All of this has to be built from scratch in every report. We've also added some really cool options here. So you can now look at it in statuses, or if you want to just look at it in total, you can see it in total. And we added an on-time report. So this looks at, are the things that you are working on, whether they haven't been completed, are they overdue, or if they were completed, were they completed before or after the due date? And of course, the advanced filter is now in every single report to the right of the entire organization up there. This is the activity by location report. We have a bunch of activities by things, like activity by people is the other major report we have. And we have added the ability to flip this into graph because, quite frankly, we are very visual creatures. And sometimes we just want to see what that looks like in graph mode. And so you can pick what you want to be on the y-axis, and then all of your locations will show up on the x-axis, and you can see exactly whichever activity you want to look at. And of course, if you have activity by location or by people, what about activity by attribute? So we're truly, you can start to see that we're truly getting into kind of whatever flexibility that you want. I mean, there's just an infinite number of reports you can do. And of course, activity by attribute, you can get graph view. And this is a really cool report. This, we've made the y-axis your impact. And of course, with the advanced filters, you can make whatever items you want to be a part of this aggregating to be a part of it. And with all of the impact leader reports, we have the impact by person, impact by location, impact by improvement, and impact by project. Those are also now in graph mode. And this is a very nice animation sequence, if I don't say. That was done by my animation assistant. That's me. This is the impact over time. This is a hugely important report if you are focused on looking at your ROI. So your buckets here on the bottom are by month. Your y-axis is by impact. And you'll notice we added a couple of different things there in the impact over time. One, we added this button here, only complete. So if you want to look at items in any status, you just uncheck that. But the report used to only show complete things, but some people kind of wanted to see non-complete things in that. And we made that also be able to flip into a cumulative report. So now your impact month over month on this report is stacking. We didn't invent all of these permutations on these reports. These were all requested by you with all very good logical reasons and stories behind wanting them. And it has really created an intensely robust reporting suite to do continuous improvement. On the engagement by location, we added a couple really cool columns. So now you can take a look at badges and people. And this is by location, and this is some data from one of y'all's instances. So I blocked it out so you can't tell who it is, but I wanted some actual numbers over here on the right side. But you can see when you were looking at the engagement by location, you didn't really get a feel for, is this a big location and they have 100% login? Or is this 10 people in the location and they have a 10%? Now you get a feel for that. You also get a feel for how many badges a specific location has. And the elusive goal line. We would love to see what you guys can do with a goal line. We had a goal line, and it was in the item report. We realized that the goal line probably made a lot more sense in the activity report. And so you can set a goal for activity of your improvement activity by location or for the whole organization. And not only that, but you can also do that at the impact as well. So the first one was the y-axis was the count of items, and now the y-axis is the impact. So that's reports. If you want to give a round of applause for reports, I know the development team worked really hard. There's a couple more things coming out in reports, but I think you can probably tell that we hope you guys are going to have us focus on other areas because you can do a ton of reporting now. And we're ready to move on. Although there's a couple, we have about a half dozen or so more reporting things that really make a lot of sense. So I think you'll see that. Boards. To give you an idea, when Matt and I first designed KaiNexus, roughly, we were finishing the design about 10 years ago, boards not even a single board existed in the entire design of KaiNexus, let alone the number of boards we have now. In fact, the first board of KaiNexus probably only appeared in somewhere around 2011 or 2012. And by 2014, you know the number of boards you could have in KaiNexus? 1. And everyone had the same one. Now, I don't think we can imagine utilizing KaiNexus without the flexibility of boards. I think of boards as workflow, is the way I think of boards. It's okay, what am I trying to accomplish either personally, and I want to set my whole workflow up so I can do my work, or what do I want to accomplish as a group? So there's very few work sessions or meetings we have at KaiNexus where if the work is being tracked in KaiNexus, where we don't have the board up that we're kind of working through. So what did we do to boards in the last year? So the first thing we did was we added the ability to search for a board in your primary quick search right at the top. So maybe you know or don't know, but right up there in the search, you can go ahead and toss in something like KPI, and all of the boards up here, you can see I've just showing boards, all of the boards that have the word KPI appear. Super quick, easy way to find a board that you're looking for. This isn't technically a board thing because you can go into this in any place. If you take your eyes down to the bottom, you can get more real estate on your screen and make that bar narrow like I'm showing right here. But also, we've added another arrow on the very bottom of that, and when you click on that, you go into full screen mode. So if you're using a really small computer, or you just want to get rid of the header and the left nav bar, you can put it in full screen mode, get a little bit more real estate. Board sections. This was one of my favorite things that we released over the year. Prior to board sections, the only thing you can do on a board is have one number of columns. So you had to pick the number of columns you wanted on your board, and that was it. You couldn't have a board that had anything other than the same number of columns. I'll just say that. Until we released board sections. And now we're able to create a board that looks like this. So essentially it's section 1 on the top with 1 column, and then section 2 has a 3-column board. It really, I think, gives you a ton of flexibility. And I said this was going to be informal, so I'm going to be informal. And I forgot to mention, I know we have more prospective customers here than we've had at prior user conferences. And the prospective customers are probably thinking, why the hell do I want to see what they developed in the last year? I've never even used it to begin with. But what I would be thinking if I was a prospective customer is just to appreciate the amount of change. This is an evolving platform, and it's evolving because of feedback that's coming from our customers. So that's all I would be thinking of, other than, oh yeah, I would much rather not have used KaiNexus without board sections. But board sections is probably my favorite thing for boards. We also added the advanced item filter to boards. So before, you had a location filter. This was something I think we released in 2017, where you basically can overlay a location filter on a board. So now instead of building a new board for every location, you can just build one board and then flip between whatever locations you want. We've now done that with the entire board filter. And so I was about to try to use the pointer on the monitor here, and I realized, yeah, you aren't going to be able to see that. And we added more reports to boards. So this is another major, what we're hearing is that y'all don't want to teach executives and sometimes middle management to go into the reporting section and configure all the reports. You want to just set up the reports that they want to see right on the board. And so we had, I think, put about 5 or 6 of the most popular reports. That wasn't enough. And so we went ahead and added all of these 8 reports. These are all the leaderboards. So essentially, these are all the lists, all 8 of those, as well as engagement by location can now be added to a board, activity by attribute, and impact by attribute. So 11 more. I think that pretty much is all the reports that you'd want to add to a board that we have on there. How many widgets are there? How many widgets, guys? 5. There's 5 widgets, right. You have to be very careful with this word. We are going to be releasing, or we released another widget. So first, what we have here is, this is the goal. Then you can put any kind of, you can configure your create button. I think we saw a ton of use cases for the create button. The item count widget, there hasn't been a lot of discussion about this. I'd like to talk more about this because this is a super simple way to put a bunch of lists on a board without having to put a card. So essentially what I've done here is I put 4 lists on a board in one card, because you can click on that number and open the list up. And each one of those lists has its own advanced filter. So if the power of that was lost on you, as it was on me the first time someone told me that to me, ask one of us what we're talking about with that, because it is a super quick way to put a ton of lists, and it's a very low performance way to do it, so your board's going to open up very quickly. And now we've added metric widgets. So you can add forecasted savings, actual cost, whatever permutation of items that you want to hit that number, you can now have that number front and center on a board. We have made header improvements. It's amazing that not everyone knows about the gradient. I was literally talking with a customer last week who is a fairly sophisticated customer, and when I pointed out, I was like, are you aware of the gradient header? It can make your card look a lot nicer. She was like, oh no, I had no idea. That is gorgeous. So these are small things, but having a really pretty board, and I think if I can call you out, Pam, you were one of the first people that really opened my eyes to that, because she got the marketing department to come and design her boards for her, and I think it really does increase adoption if it's a pleasing thing to look at. And not only did we allow you to do gradients, but you can set your org defaults for headers as well. So you can make more of your headers more unified throughout your application. That's done in the org setting area. See, I know the product. And we added the ability to put a description on your card. So now when you hover to discover, you can add a description to the header. And we think descriptions on cards make a lot of sense because then you can be reminded of, why did I put this card on this board again? There was some really important reason. That was boards. All right. Yeah. Milestones is a way to either put a workflow in that's like an approval, or it's like a toll gate. It's an add-on feature. I think it's probably our most popular add-on. And it's kind of a way to create an alternate workflow, if you will, that breaks away from the typical new, planned, active, completed workflow. We have done a ton of enhancements. So this was the third thing on the list. It was reports, it was boards, and then it was milestones. Because not everyone here is a milestone user, I'm just going to say we did a bunch of stuff to milestones, and we're going to have a product huddle specifically devoted to that. Just to explain our add-ons. So add-ons was a strategic decision we made a couple years ago, because what we realized was that there were certain features that only a small section of our customers really wanted. And one strategy we could take is, okay, well, everyone's just going to have to essentially finance the creation of all of this extra complexity. Or we could take the approach that, well, if you want this extra complexity, we'll just charge the people that are actually going to get benefit from it for that. And so that was a decision we made. We think it was the right decision because milestones does add complexity to workflows. And if you don't want to use them, we don't think we should be adding more complexity. If there's one thing you should take away from these 2 days, is the simpler you keep things, the more adoption you're going to get. If you can take off an attribute or you can take off a field from a screen, I always would err on the side of taking it off. And so that's my spiel on milestones and why we're not going to talk about them. Some people, I mean, we can clap on milestones. There was a whole bunch of, yeah. I said we were going to keep this lively, right? I have heard a very smart person who is in this room say that filters were the most powerful feature in KaiNexus. I am extremely proud of the work we have done on filters, and we made filters even more powerful because when you have a really powerful feature and you combine it with another really powerful feature, what do you get? An even more powerful feature, right? And so what we decided to do was embed the people filter inside the item filter. Right? That doesn't, I mean, so now all of a sudden you can say, okay, I want a list of every A3, that's an active status, that's being done by the Dallas location that was done by someone that has a Greenbelt certification. Couldn't have done that before. Or that was done by someone that has an MD after their name for position. So we're combining two filters and putting them in one. This has allowed us to answer a whole bunch of questions that we simply did not have the ability to answer before. This is the loved people filter, which is going to be exciting because we have some stuff to talk about with people attributes tomorrow. Little foreshadowing. We added some really powerful additions to our impact filter. You used to be able to say, okay, I want a list of items that had cost savings. Well, now with our min-max realize starting and being able to change all of our dates as well as the type, you can say, I would like everything that was a cost savings that saved us more than $1,000. And we went ahead and added that to investments as well. So advanced ROI includes investments, it includes realized date, it includes a bunch of other things. Again, that's an add-on. If your organization is interested in knowing the exact amount of money an improvement or a project is going to save an organization, then you should at least be aware of the power of the advanced ROI add-on. I'll just leave it at that. Additionally, see what I did there? We have added a has filed and a has linked. So you might be thinking, why would anybody want this? But we've had customers that want to pull back all of their items that have files or it has links. You couldn't do that before, now you can. Additionally, you can now pull back a list of a certain type of a chart. Couldn't do that before, now you can. And I mentioned that when Matt and I first designed KaiNexus, there were 4 hard-coded attributes in the system. They weren't even called attributes. We had no idea the directions that attributes were going to go. We literally have customers that have hundreds of attributes in the way that they're using them, and it made the attribute dropdown completely unusable. And so now you can tag your attributes with locations, and so when you're looking at your list, it will show the attributes that are affiliated with your location and makes it a much easier to find the attribute you're looking for. And I will also let you know that you can also just search by typing in that field as well, and it will actively search all your attributes. Filters. That was filters 2.3. And why do filters exist? To give us lists. All right. Lists have become super vital to super users of KaiNexus, and we've done a ton of work. The first thing was I mentioned that there's lots of attributes, and here's a pretty typical list here. With the explosion of attributes, it became unmanageable to find what you wanted to put into your lists, and that drop-down was essentially unusable in some organizations that had a ton of them. So we redesigned how you can find and add columns to your lists with this super easy to use configurable column edit view window. And you can now just search for it, pick it, you can set your min-max width, and we took that window and also extended it to your lists for cards. So whether you are trying to manage your collapse view or whether you're trying to manage your expanded view, you can easily do that from here. We made it much easier to copy over your columns. I mean, I can see us, you see what I mean by year of adoption? I mean, these were all things that, this may have been 50 or 60 clicks before, and now this is just 1 or 2 clicks. We've added a bunch of new columns that you can now add to lists that you couldn't add before. You can add all of your fields, you can add a bunch of different new team roles, and you can add your last comment. And then we realized we would just like a little bit more context on the last comment, and so now you can see who made it and what the date and time that they made that last comment was right there in your list. Bunch more columns with participants, participating locations, and I think there's even more columns that we added that you couldn't do before. Financial impact, and then totaling financial impact on the bottom of your financial impact. Oh, how about some more columns? Workflow, you didn't have a workflow column before. You can now put a workflow column and chart type as well. So lists have become a lot more powerful. We also realized that not many people were using the bookmark list, and we realized that maybe it was because it wasn't very accessible. So our hypothesis was if we made it and put it in a really accessible place, if you were using bookmarks, people would use it. And so now if you bookmark something, you get this nice little blue bookmark that appears up there, and when you click on it, you can go to this crafty little place that not only gives you your bookmarks, but it's also a good way to see all the impact that you've done, as well as all your projects and improvements and tasks. And that's lists. Items. Items. In my household, whenever you say the word items, the person that's next to you has to say items. I have no idea why. And when we talk about items, we're really talking about all the workflows. We're talking about projects, we're talking about improvements, task charts, incidents. It really means what you would oftentimes refer to as templates. Lots of generalized enhancements that I'm just going to list and not go over. We gave you the ability to change the name of your team roles. So if you don't like facilitators, you can now call it champions, for instance. Whatever you want to call it, you can call it here. And in this case, I've removed leaders. This is a project, so kind of the default stock would be sponsors, facilitators, leaders, and participants. Now, in this case, this person has decided to change it to sponsors, champions, participants. And this is what it would look like on the detail view. 5 years ago, I would have been like, you guys are smoking stuff. Why on earth would this change anything? And I'm telling you, I now get it. Every little thing you can do to make it easier for people to adopt your solution, it's truly meaningful. And so I wholeheartedly appreciate the cheer back there now and really get it. You can customize your legal notice per template. People are also using legal notices in lots of interesting ways to use it for little instructions and whatnot. But if you're doing incidents, for instance, or you're doing a morbidity, mortality in a healthcare organization and you're managing those, then you need to have this little stamp on each one of those, and that's where the legal notice came from. But now it doesn't really apply to every template, so now you can do it per template. And a ton of placeholder text. In fact, this was something that someone showed me in the Speed Nexus. I was like, placeholder text, really? That, once again, this is one thing that just makes it a little bit easier for people to follow. So you can do placeholder text in your create screens, in your detail screens, in your custom view panels, as well as being able to message in your success panel after you submit things. These are all tiny little things that are going to increase adoption. You now can put a drop-down or an attribute field inside of an ad hoc field. And so prior to 2.3, you could only put text in there. Now you can make this a drop-down field inside an ad hoc field. We basically unified and polished all 4 of these screens to make the experience a little more clear about what was happening and to make it a little bit more consistent. So that's transfer, copy, convert, and escalate. And that's all the work we did on items. All right, we talk about resolution. We added a new impact type. You can now do cost avoidance. You couldn't do cost avoidance in 2.3. Initially, I thought that's just a different way to say cost savings, but it's truly not. And so if that's something that you guys are tracking, then you can now track that independently. With advanced ROI, we did a lot of enhancements, but this essentially has been almost 2-year, maybe a 3-year arc for realizing where we were going to go with advanced ROI. The biggest thing that we did was being able to track a realized date. And so what that means is before, without a realized date being tracked, you can just say when the improvement was completed, but just because the improvement was completed, let's say on November 1st of 2019, doesn't mean the organization realized the benefit of it on October 1st of 2019. And so you can now alter that date and alter the schedules of when it impacts the organization. This is super important to a number of our customers that are really tracking this down to the penny. PDF, as much as I do not want anyone to print out another sheet of paper in the entire world, PDF is also shared digitally, and I have been beaten into oblivion, and we are going to continue to improve PDFs. We did a ton of things in PDF. We decreased white spaces and we increased our polish. We added a chart-only option, and we added the option to remove goal, team, and dates. This gets back to the adoption. And so it became very clear to me, in order to move more people into KaiNexus, we needed a way for them to see the benefit of KaiNexus, and that's really PDFs. And also, you know, I still see patients, and I still like the feel of paper. I still write my patient histories. I don't like there to be a computer with me. I just want to write. And so I get it. We're going to keep improving on PDFs. We've added some really interesting options here. You can now do an A4, and you can do a custom. When you click custom, you can pick the actual dimensions of the paper that you want to come out, and you can scale it. So if you want to double the content of the amount of information on your PDF, you can pick 50%, triple it, 33. I think you get the idea. Next, charts. We improved the ability to change what a data series looks like. This is one of these things that you have to go into the options of a chart series. So for example, I just changed the line thickness and whether or not you fill below it. These are all small little adoption changes. The biggest thing we did for charts that has impacted the way we use charts in KaiNexus is you can now share a data series. So you can have one chart that keeps the truth on the data series, and then if you want that data series to show up on another chart, it can just be shared with that other chart, and that other person doesn't also need to update the data on that secondary chart. So you can update data in one chart and then visualize it wherever you want that data to show on whatever other chart in the system you want to show. It's a very powerful feature. It's extremely powerful. And then you can now use shared data series to be part of your calculated series. So if you're calculating a series and one of the series you want to calculate is a shared series, you can now do that. And this right here, my friends, has been 2.3, the year of adoption.